2016. So we're trying to work through ways we can do that. But I'm in the front of the whole community. Say I'm fully supportive of Mr. Mecca and the wonderful work he's done for us at the town of Rye, and similarly for Mr. DiCrescenzo. So we've pretty much talked about this, I think, right? Town Sustainability Committee. I'd like to really turn it over to, do you want to take this, Ms. Collins, or Councilwoman Collins, or Mr. Villanova, or please? Yep. Thank you.
You know, we here at the town board have done many, many things, and it's time that we turn our attention to sustainability. And so we've played around with the idea of creating a committee that could explore ways to implement greenhouse savings and energy savings throughout the entire community, not necessarily just focused on purely residential or purely commercial or non-for-profits, but just community-wide exploration of ways that we could do what we need to do as citizens of this community and protect it for the future. So I think this is still in the early stages of where we're going to go with this and how we're going to refine it. But you know, some of the goals that we've identified would be to look at how we could reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and I think it's important to quantify that with goals of percentages and dates, which has been suggested 20% by 2020. Explore best practice efforts and lessons learned from other municipalities and sustainability efforts. I think it's very important to take the time to meet with our surrounding communities that have already begun this process and learn from others. To solicit public input and feedback. I think a project like this certainly requires the effort of the community itself. And to recommend actions that will result in the town and the community reducing their carbon footprint for future generations. I mean, that's the ultimate goal, in my opinion. We have to think about the future here. So we look forward to seeing, you know, this committee develop, and I've got high hopes for being a part of that and seeing what we can do to impact change.
Thanks very much, Councilwoman Collins. Again, I would argue that personally we've been slow to get around to this, but thanks to Councilwoman Collins, Deputy Supervisor Villanova's pushing, and I think we're taking up at the right time. I think we can make some real changes. Thank you so much, Department. Okay, Mr. Thomas is not here tonight, but I just wanted to remind everybody at home. Oh, by the way, just on the sustainability, we're looking for volunteers. And so we're looking for people to go to the committee. Rye City has put together a wonderful report. They had a committee, I think about 12 people, Mr. Carroll. Right. And you know, we love to get this really community input. And look, again, Deputy Supervisor Villanova, thanks so much for having Mr. Ford come present tonight. Wow, I learned so much. I keep getting these people, solar people, calling me at home. I have no idea what they want to talk about. But clearly there's some savings here for our average residential, average commercial, and the more we can be a conduit to helping people understand what the opportunities are out there, the more we can be a service to our community. Similarly, again, now remember, all of us. This is was it a Girl Scout project?
She's right there. Yes, far right.
There she is. What's her? Do we remember her name? She was. Oh, Anna Kay?
Anna Kay.
Anna Kay, we want, but look at it, there you can see for the first time the wonderful signage she put up. Dave Thomas done a fantastic job with the African American Cemetery. You remember, everybody remember, we have on Veterans Day, again, a number of veterans are buried there. Can't think of any greater indignation than to die for your country and have to be buried in a segregated ceremony. So we're David Thomas helping us right the wrongs of the past. And you know, we're obviously very proud of what we're doing. So come out November 8th at 10 a.m., November 8th at 10 a.m. in the morning. That's a Saturday. And finally, you know, this board was very kindly funded the Flashbacks play. I'm happy to report I was there Monday morning at 9:30, welcoming them in appropriate 1660 town supervisor garb, and Goldie, you would have been proud of us commemorating. And you know, again, we had the elementary schools in Portchester walked walk to the Capitol Theater. I want to thank the Capitol Theater for being a wonderful community participant, and then finally, and this year Blind Brook participated as well. So the Blind Brook Elementary Schools participated well. It was a wonderful celebration of I can't remember how many, but since 1660. How many years is that, Billy? The years of the town of Rye. We have a small video here. Is that right? All right. Go ahead. That's Ann Hutchison for the Hutchison River Parkway. That's Paninga for Paningo Street. This is Luigi carved the the monuments. Rushmore, Mount Rushmore. He's reliving his grandfather's dream. Lou Del Bianco, thank you, Goldie. Ward Castle, Mr. Ward, businessman.
Didn't they have flashbacks at Crawford Park?
Yes, they did. And that, ladies and gentlemen, finishes our presentation on Rye Town Model American Community. We have a lot to be proud of. Mr. Mark Carroll, thank you so much for all your help.
That's Monday?
That was Monday, right?
That was Monday, yeah.
9:30.
9:30.
Say, Garley, I got Goldie, sorry. Okay, getting back to more mundane matters, anybody have any comments on the minutes from the September 16th or 23rd?
No.
Can I get a motion to approve both?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Goldie, comments from the public?
Yeah. I'm not too happy. I don't like the fact that you're leaving this building and going to 222 Grace Church Street. I don't know what's going to happen there because you don't have all the room that you have here. And this building was incredible. Not only that, but I think parking is going to be a terrible issue. It's going to be an awful issue over there. We have trouble parking with the seniors meeting at the senior center behind 222 Grace Church Street. So I don't know what's going to happen there. But if I want to come to a meeting, where are you going to hold it? It isn't going to be like this. I'm not happy about that. I just don't like what's going to be. And I don't know what's going to be. And I don't know if I want to know what it's going to be, because it's much better when you're here. I don't think it's going to be as good over there as it is here. I'm sorry about that. I like Crawford Park. I like Oakland Beach. You have a great thing at Oakland Beach. I mean, I love helping. I love going to the concerts and everything there. I love coming and seeing what's going on in the tax office, in Hopi's office, or coming up here, or coming to the assessor's office. My taxes are killing me in my house, and my house was built in the early 1900s, but it's falling apart. And I can't do anything to make it better because I just don't have a job. I'm struggling on Social Security. So I don't know what's going to happen. I like my taxes down, but I don't know how you're going to do it. I just don't know how you're going to do it. I was watching the films and everything, and I'm saying to myself, I'm not going to be able to make it. I'm just not going to be able to make it. I just don't know what's going to happen. Are you running for election next year? I mean, what's happening here with the board?
I have no idea at this point. I haven't made a decision on that, Goldie, but thank you for asking.
How about the rest of the board? Are they running for election?
I'll leave it up to everybody. I think everybody's sort of undecided. Well, first of all, Mr. Nardi and Mr. Villanova are not up for re-election.
That's good.
Councilwoman Collins, myself, and
Yeah, but
Councilman
when?
Lars.
When
Next
is it?
November 2015.
It is November.
November 2015. So control of the board is up for the voters to decide next year, and I don't think any of us made a decision as of this point what we're intending to do.
I don't know. I'm just not happy with what's going to happen. When do you expect to move? Because I go on the third floor every day to the Chamber of Commerce, and you're across the hall from the elevator, and they're building and they're banging and they're everything, and I'm saying, how are you going to struggle on that third floor when you have all this here? And what about parking? I just don't like it. I don't know what's going to happen, or how you're going to get along, or how we're going to have these meetings. I don't know.
Well, the meetings will be at Village Hall at North Main Street, where the Village Board of Portchester meets.
Where?
At Village in Portchester at 350.
Well, that said that the police headquarters.
Right, that's where
But they're talking about building another municipal property and getting rid of that one.
Well, until that happens, we'll be meeting there for the town board meetings. As long as they're there, we will be meeting at 350 North.
All right, how am I going to find out?
We're telling you right now.
Just like you do now.
Huh?
Published in the paper.
Same meeting, third Tuesday of the month, and we'll be meeting there as the Village Board of Portchester meets there, same location. The town
So the
offices will be...
next November, Julie, on November, what are we looking at? November?
When is your next board meeting?
Yeah, let
November
me tell you.
19th.
November 19th.
Sorry.
18th.
November 10th, we open up in our,
November 18th, right, so November 18th, actually, I'm glad, we're going to talk about this later on tonight, but on Tuesday, November 18th, our Rye Town Board meeting will take place at 350 North Main Street,
Right.
which
Yeah,
at
they-
8 o'clock, so
in the
350 is where the Village of Portchester meets. And Mr. Lorenzo, I've told you before now that the camera angle is bad. It highlights my bald spot, so we got to work on that. But other than that, we should move smoothly. So Goldie, we'll see you in Portchester. The police will know. We'll let them know as well.
Yeah, you got to tell them
Yep.
because they're down there.
Yep.
And it's their building.
Thank you, Goldie. I mean, just, look, no one here wants to leave I'm going to let you sit down. Just go ahead. But no one here wants to leave this building, and we share your nostalgia for the building. The challenge we had, we occupied 40% of the building. We're never able to rent it out. We had significant CapEx in the $2 million range. Cost us more to operate than the rent where we're going. And, as you mentioned, you're at the Chamber of Commerce all the time. We want to make it easier for you. We're at a municipal center next to the Village of Portchester, next to State Assemblyman Otis, next to State Senator Latimer. So all in all, and I think, this board's expressed that in the past, that we're supportive of the move, again, and I'm hoping, well, we'll hear a report tonight, but, from what I've seen, Mr. Nardi, Councilman Nardi and Deputy Supervisor Villanova are doing a fantastic job along with Mr. Nowotnik. The construction's coming, all that banging's coming along well, we'll hear about it tonight. But I think we're going to I'm looking forward, quite frankly, to some new offices that I think that I'm probably going to have to fight Mr. Nowotnik for who gets the big office there. Great. Any other comments from the public?
Dom Servey, Rye Brook. I am totally against changing the two elected positions from elected to appointed. I believe that my rights to vote are going to be taken away from me, and I'm not too happy with that. That's too big of a thing to change, and I think it's very important because a lot of people, they went to war to protect that sacred right, and it is sacred. And I don't like when 3 or 4 people have to tell me who they want appointed. And a perfect example is that is when about 4.5 years ago, we had an employee that worked for 8 years for the Democratic Party. As soon as the new administration came in, he was told that his services were no longer needed. What they did do is, the new administration, they went ahead and they appointed Bishop Nowotnik. And they let go a guy that was there for 8 years. And not only did they appoint Bishop, they gave him a real nice raise besides. And beside that, they even gave him an assistant, which he still has today. So that's why I don't like people being appointed. And also, don't buy into this, I shouldn't say propaganda, don't buy into this, what Mr. Supervisor said, that the town is going to run better, and Mr. Villanova also said the same thing. They don't have a crystal ball in front of them that's going to tell them that the town's going to run better, and neither do the 2 other board members have a crystal ball that the town's going to run better. They don't know that. And just to say, I'm happy that the supervisor acknowledged Mr. Mecca, and I don't know this gentleman here, but he's probably good if you say that he's good. And I also would like the people to know that the only person that voted against this proposal change was Mr. Tom Nardi. And I'd like to thank him for that, and also for information that the public don't know about. He is the only Democrat on that board, and that should tell us something. So I'm asking all the residents of the town to call your friends, call your neighbors, and call your relatives, and come out and vote against this proposal change. The key word here is vote. So come out in November and vote against this change, because it's very important, and don't give up the vote so easy. And also, there is an old saying that's been around for a long time, just as these elected positions have. If it's not broken, then don't try to fix it. And I would like to ask the supervisor if I could stand at this microphone tonight, and if anybody has any comments, yourself or the board, I'd like to be able to stand here, because every time I come to this meeting, I'm always asked the same question. Mr. Servey, do you have any more questions? And if not, you can sit down. Well, tonight, with your permission, I'd like to stand here, and if anybody has any comments, I'd like to stand here and answer them, if you don't mind.
Not at all. In fact, actually, I think that would be healthy.
Thank you.
I think that, it is an important conversation. It is an important debate. It's not an easy decision, and it should be fully considered. So I think actually this will be very constructive. Let's have I think it's important to have an airing of the ideas, which is something we wanted to do tonight in any case. And clearly there's pros and cons for all decisions that need to be made. I guess the first question I'd ask town, and please, and we'll give you as much time as you want to respond. So just Mr. Town Attorney, which towns, can you tell me which towns actually vote for receiver of taxes? And I think, and superintendent of highways?
I only know of one, Harrison does, Mamaroneck does not. I do not think Ossining does. I don't think Mount Pleasant does. I mean, I think the trend is that most do not. I think the reason is that these are not policy-making positions. These are administrative. And short-term, I think the plan is to keep Nick and John as appointees of the board. And I should emphasize it's the board that would make the appointment, not the supervisor, who has one vote on the board. Long-term, I think that as the board looks at ways to make government more efficient and save you tax dollars, they would probably consider the possibility of combining the position with another existing position like the town clerk or the controller. I think most towns now have a finance office, and that's where the taxes are collected. So you'd have a combined operation. And I think these are the kinds of options that a future town board, not necessarily this one, you would have to consider, when you think of how you want to collect your taxes. As you know, things are becoming much more electronic. Technology being what it is, things have changed. We used to be a surprise when we could go from writing checks to credit cards when we pay our bills. So I think this is just a logical step forward into the future. It's not a reflection on anybody who's currently serving or may serve in the future. But I think from the standpoint of how you run a government, it just gives the town board more options. I don't think there's a Republican or a Democratic way to collect taxes, quite frankly. I don't think there's a Republican or Democratic way to be the superintendent of highways. I do think that the people who make the policy, who are the town board people, should be elected and accountable to the voters. But I think administrative positions, I don't know what difference it would make as far as a political affiliation, and quite frankly, I think there shouldn't be any as far as the administrators go, to make it better. So there's no sense that the receiver of taxes is a Democrat and therefore he's only working for the Democrats, because that's not the case. He works for everybody. And the same thing with the superintendent of highways. I often say this, I also don't think there's a Republican or Democratic way to pick up the garbage or provide police or fire protection. So I do think at this level, a certain amount of partisanship is unnecessary and shouldn't exist. I can't say that it doesn't happen. It does happen, as we all know, in life. I would say, though, however, over the last, as you described, the last 5.5 years in this town, I think there's been a remarkable absence of partisanship. I can't think of anything that's been done here.
I just gave you an example. It happened already.
I can respond to that, because what happened was there is one position in this town called the confidential secretary to the supervisor.
It wasn't called that before.
Well, that's the title that's in the budget.
Okay.
And that was the individual who was serving the prior supervisor who had left office. So it made perfect sense for that individual not to want to serve the new supervisor who came in and defeated the old supervisor. Be that what it is. That position is a separate position, and it was appointed by the board to work for the supervisor.
Okay.
I don't think it was because someone belonged to a particular party, because I don't think it really matters.
Well,
but anyway, to answer your question about this particular proposal, no one's giving up the right to vote. It is a referendum, so like you said, tell your friends how you want them to vote. That's great. And if the people choose not to make the change, then status quo, and that's fine. I mean,
let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question now.
Sure.
You said that it's not going to be political. Am I correct?
Yeah, I'm saying it should not be political.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, we all know how the system works. You know it, I know it, they know it, the people here know it, the people that are watching that television know it. There's factions that are going to say, okay, if you're on my side of the fence, we're going to appoint you. That goes on every day. You know that now. Come on.
But I
No,
don't
let's
think
be
that's
real
the
about
case.
things.
Well, okay, let me give you an example.
Wait a minute. Let me finish.
Okay.
What I'm saying is, you're actually taking my right to vote, a sacred right that people lost their lives for, to do that. That's a privilege in this country. It's a democratic way to elect people. And I don't like people to choose for me. I want to choose my own people by going to the polls and vote. Okay? That's the bottom line here.
I understand.
And you can't tell me that it's not going to be political, because I'm sorry, I have to disagree with you. And I just told you,
What I'm saying
if you're
is
on the
that-
right side of the fence, you're free. If you're not, I just told you, they told a guy that was here 8 years
Can I-
that he's finished.
I just, I think
you
this
know,
is, just. I think this,
I
but this actually highlights the discussion. And again, I'm saying, but there's fair-minded points on both sides.
Okay.
So you're absolutely correct. What we're asking the public to do is to focus on their election of the policymakers on the town board rather than the receiver of taxes. Now, let's take your example. For me, I had a choice coming in because it was an appointed position solely by the supervisor for me to choose confidential secretary. Now, Mr. Nowotnik, I think, has done an absolutely spectacular job. And for me, it was fundamentally important that I be able to hire who I wanted in that position. Mr. Nowotnik has saved the town $6 million. Our budget's $3 million. He saved the town You could run the town for 2 years for free on the savings he's generated. And so ultimately, I think it's fundamentally important that the confidential secretary be an appointed position. Similarly, and it's not as fundamental, I don't want to maintain that at all, but I do think it's helpful to the town as it seeks to reorganize and continue to restructure to make the receiver of taxes, from an institutionalist perspective. I think we're all clear we're not talking about any people. But from an institutional perspective, as you know, Mr. Servey, the one thing we've tried to do here at this government is fundamentally reform the way the town does business. And so as an institutional matter, we would like, the four people that voted in favor, would like for the board to basically, you to hold the board account and the board for its decisions in restructuring. And we think, we'd be able to, gives us greater flexibility over time to restructure town operations to generate further savings. I mean, that's it. But you're absolutely right. There is an element where ultimately you don't get a chance to vote for the receiver of taxes. Now, quite frankly, when I go into the ballot booth, there's a plethora of jobs. I really don't have any idea what the Westchester County Clerk does. There's a whole bunch of judges. There's so many positions out there. To fully inform yourself on every absolutely individual out there, I don't think. And then finally, the last point, I would argue, the one thing I'm very proud of is we have been wholly, you probably disagree, but we've been wholly apolitical. In fact, I get criticized for being so apolitical in the people we hire and the way we approach things. And I would argue, quite frankly, it's less political. I was with the town supervisor. How the heck are you considering getting rid of the receiver of taxes, superintendent? Who's going to collect the signatures? Who's going to do the legwork? Who's going to go out and carry the water for the party? I would argue, quite frankly, it's far less political rather than more political.
That's your opinion. I happen to disagree with that. I'm sorry.
I think you respectfully disagree, and I think, let me give you one. Anybody else want to say anything on this topic tonight? Mr. Darby, do you want to say?
You already know,
Yep.
because I'm with
Yep.
Mr. Servey. I'm against it, and
Yep.
I feel, like I mentioned last month, it's taking somebody's right away to vote.
Yep.
And superintendent of highways gets a paid amount, which is basically nothing.
Yeah, it's $1.
No, it's not $1.
Oh, whatever.
It's
Okay,
more.
I'm sorry.
It's 2,500.
Whatever.
It's been that way for a while, but
Okay.
there's a lot of legwork involved. There's
Maybe
a lot
I'll run
of
against him when he runs next time, if it goes through.
I think,
I mean, it doesn't go.
I just feel it's been a voted position. It doesn't cost the taxpayers any more money. It's not a separate voting. It's with everybody else, and I feel just to leave it be.
Well,
And that the people have the choice on who they want running the town. I've said it. It's a town of Rye, and people from the town of Rye should be working for the town of Rye. And I'm very adamant about that.
is there anybody else that has any comments before I leave?
I have one comment.
Okay.
We do keep talking about voting, and I feel anybody who knows me knows I'm a big fan of, or I should say big proponent of voting locally. Locals are where the change takes place. You have to get out there and vote for your local officials. It's our roads, it's our teachers, and all of our local votes. So what's upsetting to me is always the turnout for local votes. And so we're talking about a very small amount of the population choosing positions. And perhaps if we, had 100% turnout, then you'd be able to elect certain officials in a more confident way when it comes to certain positions. And, I just think we have to encourage people to get out there and vote. No matter which way you're going to vote, you have to get out there and vote if you're going to have a voice. And right now, there's not too many voices out there. People don't get out to vote.
Hopefully.
But if this proposal goes through, we're not going to have no voice. We're never going to have it because it's not going to happen anymore. And now we have another position that's elected, and it's the clerk's office. And maybe after the supervisor leaves, somebody else gets in and will say, well, you know what? I don't like this here woman here, or I don't like the receiver of taxes. We're going to get rid of him. We don't have no say. But if he was elected, they have to wait until his term is up. And if we don't like him, never mind about these people, we could vote him out. But if they like him and we don't have a say about it, we're out of the picture. We're on the outside looking in. That's my point. We're losing our precious vote. That's the bottom line.
Hopefully on election day, enough people come out and vote in the way they want to do it.
Well, I hope they do.
I hope they come and vote.
So do I. And I'm going to tell them once more, come out and vote against this change that they want to make, because this is a very important thing. Don't give up your vote so easy.
Well, now it's going to be up to the people to make the decision.
Okay, I want to thank the board and everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Survey. Thank you for generating that conversation. I appreciate it. Thanks very much. Okay. Any other comments from the public? Sorry, yep, Mr. Ford, or Mr. Hubert?
Supervisor Carr and members of the board, Dick Hubert from Rye Brook. I'd just like to add one voice in favor of what you're proposing. In the Village of Rye Brook, we do not elect the village manager who runs the whole town. He is appointed by the village board and the mayor, much as you appointed Mr. Nowotnik. We do not elect the police chief. We do not elect the sanitation department. We do not elect, in fact, any of the administrative staff in the entire village. The only people we elect are the village board. I would hate to think that we would elect the assessor for the town, because the assessor requires immense education, requires great skills, and I'd hate to see an election where people were voting by party line as opposed to competence. And in this regard, I'd like to remind everyone of the great, and Mr. Nardi, I hope you're listening to me, of the great Democratic governor of the state of New York, Eliot Spitzer, who was so concerned about corruption in the comptroller's office in the state of New York that he demanded that the then corrupt Democratic comptroller, and Mr. Spitzer was a Democrat, if you remember, Mr. Nardi, he wanted to appoint the comptroller and have the comptroller appointed by a committee of independent but very knowledgeable people, so that the best financial person could be in charge of the state of New York. And that proposal was vehemently opposed by Assemblyman and Speaker Sheldon Silver, and he managed to kill it. So the concept of having competent people appointed for very specific goals went all the way up to the governor's office in the state of New York under a Democratic administration, and it was a Democrat who killed it. So I want to give you that little bit of history to point out that on this little local level, further professionalizing and streamlining the Office of the Receiver of Taxes and further professionalizing whatever future maintenance of bridges has to be done in the town of Rye, and not leaving it to someone who, let's say I ran for superintendent of highways, I'd be totally incompetent to do that job because I'm not an engineer. I've had no civil engineering training, and I wouldn't know when I saw a rotten construction job on a bridge unless I actually stepped on it and the cement started crumbling under my feet. And that's exactly what happened when I was a member of the Rye Town Coterminous Commission, and I was asked by the mayor of Rye Brook to look into corruption in the town of Rye, and one of the first places we started looking at was the highway department under the former supervisor, where the cement was crumbling under my feet under the then single bid contract offering of the Otter Creek Bridge, built by a single bid contractor. Would we have been better off with an appointed supervisor, appointed superintendent of highway? Under that administration, I doubt it very much. And the reason that we have a new administration in this town was that the town voters rose up and threw it out, along with the then confidential secretary. So a little history is in order for everybody to remember all these things. So as we're considering this change in the town, as someone who was in the military and served our country, Mr. Nardi, Mr. Servey, excuse me, and understands the importance of fighting for the vote. Believe me, the vote to fight for is the vote for the town board, and the concept of professionalizing the staff of the town is something we should be supporting. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much,
I have
Mr.
one thing to say. With the superintendent of highways, John can go and look at all the stuff, but actually it's the state that comes down, and they're the ones that are going to rate the bridges and tell you what repairs that have to be done. You don't tell the state tells you.
Terrific. And that's another reason why a competent professional or a competent part-time professional should be doing that job and not someone who knows nothing about it. And if I were the superintendent of highways, I wouldn't be able to have a discussion, a competent discussion, with the state civil engineers, nor should I. Nor should an elected superintendent of highways with no experience at all. So we're in agreement on that.
Thank you, Mr. Other comments? Mr. Ford?
George Ford, Portchester. Forgive my ignorance, if you could educate me and maybe the public a little further on why the town of receiver of taxes and the superintendent of highways is not a full-time position like any other municipal employee.
Well, first,
The receiver of taxes is full-time. Superintendent of highways is not.
And I'm sorry, to clarify my question, then why does he have
Receiver of
to,
taxes is a full-time position.
but why does he have to be voted upon by the,
It's just the way it's been since
It's-
the beginning of 1777, when the town is actually older than the country.
it's in the town bylaws, basically?
Yeah, it's in the.
one thing about Mr. Ford, one thing
No.
we've discovered, there's just so much inertia in government. And if this is the way it's always been done. And ultimately, that's, I sort of talked about the 3.5% tax burden, because look, you've heard it for 7 years, but ultimately, if we continue to do things the way we're doing them, no one will be able to live in New York State. I mean, I'll give my speech, quite frankly, we're 50th in terms of everything. How does New York State become 50th in terms of a place to do business with New York State as the capital?
Right.
Highest property taxes, #1 out migration, and seniors will no longer be able to live here unless we do something fundamental. So we're really this is consistent with the fundamental operational changes. And I'm sympathetic with the view put forward by Mr. Survey, Mr. Nardi. It's a fair-minded view, but to answer your question, that's the way it's always been done.
Sure. And to Mr. Survey's point, that's what makes America great, this debate.
Yep.
We're able to come here and debate this, and everybody has their right to vote. And I would hope that also when it comes down to the political side, that more people from one side come out to vote that way, and it's still a politically motivated type scenario. But from my perspective and my input, I would love to see these gentlemen have, contracts or full-time employment where they wouldn't have to worry about their job coming due every 2 or 3 years, or whoever's going to be in the control, even in your situation with what you're putting out there, where you would have the control to hire or fire that person. I think they both deserve to hold that position upon their own will. And when the time comes, I want to retire and have retirement benefits like any other municipal employee, whether it be the Village of Portchester, Rye Brook, or.
Well, I didn't answer Goldie whether I'm running again. If I were to run again, I were to win again, I would make it very clear. My goal would be to keep Mr. Meck on as long as he wants, and my goal would be to keep Mr. DiCrescenzo as long. That would be my goal.
Sure, absolutely, and I agree with that. I think these are two positions, and that certainly shouldn't have to, from an administrative point of view, shouldn't be political. They should have a job and not have to worry about that. The voters have the right to come out and vote for the positions up here. And lastly, I'll leave my remarks as to say good luck in the move and all the best.
Thanks very much, Mr. Ford. Okay, I think that looks like it's all the comments. Thanks, Mr. Survey, for the conversation. I appreciate you coming to take the time to talk to us tonight. Mr. Hubert, thank you for your comments, and Mr. Ford, thank you for your comments, and the board as well. That's what makes America beautiful. I mean, in all honesty, you look across the globe, and the constituents of the town are going to decide. We propose, and you guys will dispose. So I'm very, very, very pleased with the conversation tonight. Thank you, everybody. Again, very civil conversation. So let's see if we can move through the rest of these items on the agenda and plow through them. Would I promise that? Wow, 9:30. I
What'd you promise?
I might have overpromised here. Okay, let's try and rip through these. American Legion's Post. This is great. They're looking for a $1,000 donation. This is what we gave last year, Mr. Nowotny?
Yes, sir.
I think, obviously, we want to support our veterans. Does anybody object to that?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Let's give our veterans $1,000 for the number. And let's get out, people. Let's get out on Veterans Day. Let's get out there and support our veterans. The world's never been more uncertain. People are risking their lives on our behalf. Let's get out there and do that. IMA with the Village of Rye Brook. Mr. Nowotny, Mr.
Yeah, that's me. If I may, Mr. Supervisor,
Please.
this you have before you a resolution, and attached to it is a proposed IMA with the Village of Rye Brook. Essentially, they have a few situations where there are property maintenance code violations where someone doesn't maintain their property. The village will go on the property, do the maintenance, and then bill the homeowner. There are also situations where homeowners make applications and they have to pay for the outside professional services, which is in the village code, and they don't pay it. So the village has asked us to place these charges on the tax bills for the village, as we do with Portchester, like I think we do with the sidewalk program, and then we would collect these charges, and in the event they don't get paid for a period of time, they would be qualified for in rem. And of course, we could in rem the property, although I doubt that would happen for these fairly small charges. But in any event, they'd be on the tax bills, so it would. It's a good thing to do for the Village of Rye Brook. It is legally sound, and we can in rem these things if necessary. So since we do this for Portchester, I recommend that you adopt the resolution and have the supervisor sign the IMA.
Wonderful. Any questions?
No.
Bishop?
I'd like to
Any
make.
questions? Go ahead, sorry.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve this IMA.
I got a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now we got some the town newsletter. The town newsletter, we want to vote for it, don't we? We forgot that, yeah?
Yeah.
So we
got one?
we'll just need that to Paul.
You should sign too.
Okay, so the certiorari now, town assessor Knauer is not here, but I've been through there with her on all these. So basically, the 64 merit is a bigger reduction than I normally like. Okay, all right, okay. So basically, Mr. Noto, can you help us out here? I'm
You
fine
know,
with the next two, and I know I talked to Town Assessor Cannaro, she assured me that we should be approving these. However, what happened on this property? Do we
You know what, I don't recall 64 Merritt. I do know that she and, I think this was Jeff Binder.
Mr. Bender,
Spent a
yeah.
lot of time on it. I suspect that the I&Es reflected a fairly high assessment that might not have been quite accurate. I see that the reductions range from 26 to 31% over the 4 years in question. But I also think that some other years, yeah,
Well, I see she's